time. It's one of the greatest commodities.
Welcome to the Living Superfood Show. My name is Yamoya, and I'm here with my co-host, the one and only Master Chef, Health and Food Scientist, Keedy Awadu. How you doing today, Keedy?
Greetings, Brother Yamoya. How am I doing? We black and we shine. We shine like the noonday sun. Yes, we shine.
All right, so today we'll be talking about your latest release, Panic, what the coronavirus pandemic tells us about the state of the world, as well as infectious human viruses. So I'm just going to read a quick excerpt from your book, and then if you don't mind commenting on that, I'm sure we would greatly appreciate it. So, quote, "This nation has less than 5% of the world population, but is registering nearly 30% of deaths from this infectious pandemic. This disproportional mortality is in direct contradiction with per capita healthcare expenses for the U.S., which are the highest in the world." And that is actually coming from your book, once again, Panic. And so yeah, Keedy, what's your thoughts on that excerpt from your book?
Mm-hmm. Well, it is puzzling. It is perplexing. The United States, when it comes to investment in medical research or healthcare research, the United States spends twice as much as the next highest spending nations put together, and on average, the United States spends twice as much on medical healthcare research. It spends twice as much on per capita healthcare expenses than the next 12 of the OECD nations, kind of a collection of the world's most prosperous nations. You add the next 11 nations after the United States, average them out, and the United States is spending twice that. U.S. has a current population of 329 million people, which makes it the fourth largest nation in the world, behind China, India, and the European Union. Why then does the United States, with 4.3% of the world population, consistently yielding and increasingly yielding the highest by far percentage of COVID deaths? It's because in the United States, the coronavirus pandemic has taken on a strongly political tone. There's greed at hand here when the hospitals that were already running difficult fiscal balances over the years now find, all we have to do is call everyone a COVID death and we get paid. If we put them on a ventilator, we get $39,000 per person. So we're now seeing, in a case of one notorious New York hospital, everybody was being put on a ventilator. Now, under normal circumstances, in an intensive care situation, 8 to 10% of the people put on ventilators are dying. But in this particular case, they said that everyone, 90% of the people going on ventilators, were going to be dead at the end of this thing. So what has happened? This so-called pandemic, this so-called infectious disease, has turned into something highly political. I say it is now being used as a vehicle for eugenics, population improvement through selective breeding, or in this case, killing off the unwanted population. And there's a lot of evidence to show that what I just said is actually happening. Now, some people aren't going to want to believe it because it's shocking, but this is not the first time this has happened. And if the people don't accept that it is happening and stop it, you can be assured it won't be the last time that this is happening like this.
Wow, thanks for that great response. So the words virus and infection were used throughout the book. Can you please explain how viruses can be an infectious agent and how a virus can be transmitted from one human host to another?
In the book, I come to a most distinct position that I think that virology, the science of study of viruses, which is about 124 years old, needs to be called to the carpet, completely reassessed. So at no point do I ever commit during the book Panic that viruses are problematic. In fact, most of the time when I talk about viruses, a whole section where I ask the question, what is a virus? And I use 10 science-based responses. I ask then a second question, is a virus alive? Using the same thing, 10 first ask scientific responses. And so there's a lot of discrepancy on what a virus is. And are viruses infective? They better not be. Because another of the references I use in the book talks about the number of viruses that floating through the atmosphere fall to the earth every day. And it is something in the quadrillion power level. I mean, it's unbelievable, to the point that on every square meter of the Earth's surface, it is estimated that some 25,000 to maybe 4 million viruses fall out of the sky on every square meter of the Earth. So are viruses infective? They better not be. Because if so, they are ubiquitous. It's literally to the point where every breath we take, we're exposed to virus. Every time somebody working in a meat packing plant and they're cutting up carcasses and bodies and stuff, they're exposed to maybe 5,000, maybe 50,000, maybe 50 million so-called viruses every minute. They are that ubiquitous. So at a certain point in the book, we have to answer this question, what is a virus? And the conclusions that the best evidence suggested that what are being called viruses are just a normal background process of every cell, every living cell that comes to the end of its life, breaks up to a four-part series of stages. It's collectively known as apoptosis, cellular senescence, or programmed cellular death. And through this process of apoptosis, and through another process called extracellular endosomal system, these little things get created all day long, hundreds of millions of times a minute, that are called viruses. Others would call them exosomes.
All right. So the medical society makes the claim that infectious, quote unquote, viruses or diseases like HSV-1 and HSV-2, known as herpes simplex virus, and HIV, also known as human immune deficiency virus, currently can't be cured. Others have claimed that HSV and HIV can be cured. Is there any evidence to support either perspective?
There's evidence that supports both perspectives. And the evidence is coming from the same peer-reviewed science community. The deeper you dig into this, and I've been digging into this, especially the subject of HIV, for 40 years, since, 40 years? Since 1987. So it's not quite 40 years. We're talking about 33, 34 years. And the information is all over the place. Who do you want to believe? All right, well, let's go to someone who was at the very beginning of the discovery of HIV, Dr. Luc Montagnier, who was forced to share the discovery of HIV after Dr. Robert Gallo, the American scientist, actually stole the discovery from Montagnier, stole samples and claimed them to be his own. Well, Luc Montagnier actually, Gallo did not, but Luc Montagnier was awarded a Nobel Prize for medicine for his discovery of what was called HIV. Yet Luc Montagnier never really committed to the idea that HIV is the causative agent that they claim it to be. In fact, there's a pretty well-known documentary film out there called House of Numbers, in which Luc Montagnier gives a number of different quotations and extensive interviews that are sprinkled throughout the documentary. But at one point he says that the average person who becomes infected or comes into contact with HIV actually clears it from their blood within a couple of weeks. And we've seen numerous cases of children said to be HIV infected, HIV positive when they're at birth, sharing their mother's blood and immune system, but later test HIV negative. I've had friends that tested HIV positive and then later tested HIV negative. So if we are to accept that the HIV antibody testing process is a legitimate way of determining who is infected and who is not infected, and that's a big if, but if we are to assume that that process is legitimate, then you can find many, many, many cases where HIV has disappeared from a person's body, which would fit the criteria of what most of us would call cured.
Okay. So what about like the HSV?
You know what? Yeah, one would almost have to ask the question, what is HSV? Human herpes simplex virus? Well, how many of them are there? Are there 12 different, 24 different? Are there 10,000 different herpes simplex virus? Because when we talk about what is herpes, well, herpes is just an eruption of toxins inside of the body attempting to come out. And in the course of herpes, they say, well, it's coming out through certain soft tissues, mucal tissues around the lips and or around the sexual organs. But this process of the encapsulation of toxic material that attempts to come out of the body through the skin, that's the basis of acne. That's the basis of boils. That's the basis of a whole bunch of different things that take place on a regular basis. And so once we get a chance to kind of look deep into the stories of the emergence of these so-called infectious diseases, we really begin to become more and more unsettled that the science is so absolutely contradictory. So I say, from my perspective, what is called herpes simplex virus, which probably is ubiquitous, it's probably in everyone's body. This is most people's body. The eliminative system for getting rid of toxins and waste is working at a pretty good functional a level of functionality, so that these toxins aren't trying to find any way out of the body through the skin or through the soft tissues that are mucus lined.
Okay. So is it true that some holistic practitioners have been sued for using the term cured? If so, why?
Yeah, the American Medical Association. Some call it a mafia organization. I refer to it as the medical pharmaceutical cartel because it does function like a cartel. And they have got a relationship, or a bunch of different relationships, that basically they are like the Godfather. And if somebody wants to say something about health or medicine or what is or is not a cure, it's got to be sanctioned by this organization, or else they will bring the weight of the law down upon them. Now, I had a dear friend who I've known for 25 years. He's now become an ancestor. Most people know him as Dr. Sabi, Dr. Alfredo Bowen.
Ashe.
And yeah, and he was having such success in treating people with the immunodysfunction that became known as HIV/AIDS. He was having success dealing with them that he was able to reverse the cases of many of his clients, his patients. And so he ran an advertisement in a New York magazine that says, "We have the cure," using the word cure, for AIDS. Well, the cartel, the establishment, medical establishment, did not like that at all. And so they sued Dr. Sabi and actually were able to drag him before the Brooklyn District or the Brooklyn State Supreme Court. And again, people say, well, Sabi went to the U.S. Supreme Court. No, it wasn't the U.S. Supreme Court. It was a Supreme Court of the state of New York, and it happened in the Brooklyn borough. But he actually went into court, and they challenged him for using this word cure. He won his case because he called in, I believe, some 29 witnesses and their case records to prove, and every one of the 29 said, yes, Dr. Sabi cured me of the disease for which I was being treated, and they showed the records of things like the reversal of HIV, antibody positive testing, as well as the people, the people just said, hey, listen, look at me, I'm healthy, I'm supposed to be dead, I'm not. So at a certain point, they had to accept the fact that this humble man, Dr. Sebi, was giving them what they could call a cure, and so Dr. Sebi ultimately was exonerated.
Have there been clinical studies on how diet can impact all forms of the quote unquote coronavirus? If so, should there be more clinical studies?
There have been these clinical studies, case studies. I myself have had 2 clients who tested positive, and I say, well, it's too bad that anyone ever talked you into even taking this antibody test, but if you did, don't worry about it. I got you covered. So we do have examples of people using nutrition to clear up their condition. For one, the people who presented to me after listening to them describe their situation, I said, you should never have taken an antibody assay for an infectious disease in the first place, because your condition was so bad that you had so many circulating immune complexes, meaning immune challenges that cause the creation of beta and gamma globulin, and these are different immune system proteins that accumulate in our blood that show up on these tests. Well, these proteins accumulate and accumulate over the course of a lifetime based upon how many things you're exposed to, that in actuality, it's a wonder you don't test positive for everything. The only thing that these antibody tests can determine is that you have too much circulating immunoglobulin in your blood. You've been exposed to a lot, and you're in need of a good detoxing to clear your bloodstream out. It's what's common, well, not so common, but it's technically called hypergammaglobulinemia, a 10-syllable word that basically means your immune system's working, you've just been exposed to a whole lot of stuff, and therefore you have such a broad spectrum of these proteins as antibodies in your body that you're going to show up as reactive on these antibody assays, these tests. I personally, based upon what I know, and I've been studying these tests now for well over 30 years, no one could presently talk me into ever taking an immune antibody assay for anything, and that includes that doggone prostate-specific antigen test. It is the same type of test, and is still subject to the same type of hyperreactivity, after which the treatment is many times more deadly than the pathology itself.
Okay. So this next question may be a little sensitive, so I just want to give you a heads up. So if you want to answer it, that's fine. If not, or so, then please do. So my question is, why did Amazon reject your book?
I went round and around and round with Amazon, only to realize Amazon didn't reject it, their computers did. Their process for accepting and rejecting books was based upon computer analysis, artificial intelligence, and the AI rejected it. Now, I've subsequently, after dancing round and round with them about 6 different rounds, I actually have the book up now on Amazon.
Oh, that's great.
In both Kindle and in print. But here's the thing. I had to go take the cover and redact the words coronavirus and pandemic off the cover, on front and back. And originally, when I did that, the second time I did that, they say, okay, your book is up for printing, and if you go to Amazon, you look, and it's got these big, ugly black bars on the front and the back of the book. But the Kindle, I think maybe was reading the inside of the text, and so when I kept responding to their rejection letters with detailed questions to them, eventually it came to the point that I kind of outclassed their artificial intelligence algorithm reading process, and that some real people actually had to read my responses. And after they read my response about 2, maybe 3 times, they finally okayed it. So now it's up in Kindle as well, And I think that one has a redacted cover as well. So it's a bizarre situation going on over there, but I think it's a good lesson. And I'm not necessarily mad that it happened. For one, I was able to get the book published myself, even though printing through Amazon had become a convenience, but that's a convenience we all need to be real careful of, because Jeff Bezos has enough control over too many of our lives. But one of the things that kind of let me know, and this is something I'd already been aware of, but it let me know in real direct terms that this future, we're returning over more and more decisions that impact a larger community, its health and its prospering, are being turned over to artificial intelligence bots, I think is a future that we would be better, very, very cautious about, maybe to the point of saying, let's back up. Let's get away from the edge of this abyss. Let's start putting humans back into position where these AI bots have taken over, and let's see if we can create a more sustainable, a more humane future for us all. People need jobs, too.
Oh yeah, especially during this state and climate that we're in. So,
That's right.
so my last question for you, Brother Keedy, is why should people read your book?
People should be skeptical about everything taking place with the medical, pharmaceutical, drug complex these days. We talked earlier about the United States spends disproportionately on medical healthcare research and per capita healthcare spending, but it is a sick nation. America spends so much on healthcare, but insofar as patient satisfaction ranking, the United States is 37th among the list of the wealthiest, most prosperous nations in the world. 37th in patient satisfaction. Why should people be skeptical? There is currently a big, big crisis in this country of response reaction to police violence, the law enforcement killings, in particular of black people, but of all Americans. But I can assure you, iatrogenics, which is called death by doctor, that's a technical name for death by doctor, medical errors, bad practices, adverse drug reactions, and a whole spectrum of these things, including the maltreatment of elderly people in outpatient clinics that leads to their death. In America, for every one black person killed by law enforcement, according to 2016 figures, 425 black people will be killed by bad medicine, death by doctor, iatrogenic. For all Americans, for every one killed by law enforcement during that same year, 2016, 975 Americans died as early as a consequence of bad medicine. People need to know these facts. And once they know these facts and they accept these facts are valid and are verified as I stated them, then they're going to have to ask the question, well, is this what happened to my uncle, to my grandfather, to my parents? Is this what happened to my brother, to my sister? Iatrogenics. So just as we see this horrifying response reaction to these violence, to these videos showing the police violence and killing these people, well, that's happening at a scale much, much higher than that. And people need to be alerted to it. They need to be aware of it. They need to also come to a determination about this coronavirus that there's really no evidence of the virus doing the damage. What we do have evidence of is that what originally began as a quote-unquote virus-created pneumonia when it broke out in Wuhan, China, has now, after it's gone to Italy, it went from pneumonia to cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, and geriatric features, meaning old people diseases. Now that it's come to America, it's not one, it's not five, it's 21. 21 different diseases and disorders are now called COVID-associated deaths and then morbidities. But if you take all 21 of these comorbidities, as they're called, separately, without any thought of any common agent called coronavirus linking them together, and if you added up the deaths from these 21 different causes of death, guess what? You have the leading cause of death. So why should people read the book? because people want to be free. They want their minds back. They want their lives back. There will be no going back to normal. But in the book, especially by the end of the book, we say, let's not even try to go back to normal because normal was unacceptable. Let's go to a superior position for ourselves as individuals, our family, community, for our nation, however we determine our nation, our national loyalty to be. Let's go forward to a new glorious age. And for me, one of the best things people could do after reading this book is to cast the medical, pharmaceutical, drug complex out of their lives as much as possible and get back to living again. Learn how to get back to living again.
All right. Well, on that note, where can people reach you?
I want them to look at the new book. The book is entitled Panic, and it is at the website, thepanicbook.com. I had another book come out the same month, 2 books on science in 1 month. My brother Moya, how many people do you know can you get that one done in their lifetime? That was a pretty amazing accomplishment, and I'm very proud of it.
You should be.
The Blackest Soil, you can find them both at my personal website, and there's a contact information there, KEIDI.biz, Keidi.biz. You're going to see a huge catalog of my books. Number 35 and number 36 are out, and believe it or not, as much as I've told myself I wasn't going to do so, I've already got book number 37 in production, probably due by the end of August.
All right. Well, Keidi, congratulations on the release of Panic, and hopefully people will be able to read your book and definitely take some great information from that. So is there anything else that you'd like to say before we get out of here?
I want to leave this powerful thought within people's minds. The future belongs to those best prepared to create that future today. There's no need for us to wait, no need for us to delay. We know we are destined to a much greater future, so let's cast down our buckets where we are and begin this work. Thank you so much, my brother, for the contributions to that great and noble future that you have committed yourselves to and the actions that you engage every day to fulfill that promise.
All right. Well, thank you, Keidi, for your time, and thanks everyone for listening. This is the Living Superfood Show. Until then, take care.